Hello and welcome to the Faded Wildflower Crochet. My name is Rachel, and I am back with another video where I test out 4 patterns to see if they're worth your time and effort. And of course, today's theme is Valentine's Day. As I'm posting this video, Valentine's Day is less than 2 weeks away, so it might not be enough time to make a big, elaborate, intricate project, but it's the perfect amount of time to make some cute amigurumi. So I have 4 patterns today that I am testing out, so let's go ahead and get started. The first pattern that I chose is this absolutely adorable little otter who's holding a heart, and it is by the designer Plush World by Steffi on Instagram, which I will have all of these patterns linked down below, of course. So let's go ahead and cut to otter making Rachel. So here he is, or here she is rather. This was a gift for my younger daughter and she named her Julia. I'm not sure why, but I think that's a beautiful name for a cute little otter. So this pattern, for the most part, was pretty easy to follow. Now, with this being an Instagram pattern, there aren't a ton of details. There's not a ton of photos. They can only have so much space to fit in the little grid. That doesn't bother me too much, but if you're somebody who wants a whole lot of photos and are able to follow that easier, you're not going to have that with this one. I didn't find any errors with this pattern. However, there was one row where it was a little bit confusing that I had to redo a couple of times, where they are basically wanting you to do the same thing 3 times, but in the middle section, they're wanting you to do in the back loops. And just the way that I read it was a little bit off. That could have just been me. But the other thing I would say about this pattern that was a little bit confusing if you've never done it before is that this pattern has you do some face shaping, which if you've never done that before, you essentially put your needle through in a few different spots in order to make the face a little bit more shaped like how an otter's face might be shaped. Now, I have done this before, so I'm experienced at doing it. So I knew what the chart meant. But if you've never done any face shaping before, you might want to look up a quick YouTube tutorial of how to do that first before you tackle this one. Of course, that step is optional, so you could always just leave that part behind. Now, something that surprised me about this pattern that I didn't realize going in is that there is some no-sew technique to this. Now, it's not completely no-sew, but you do crochet on the tail, the feet, and the hands as you go, which you guys know if you've been watching my channel, that for the most part, I enjoy sewing things onto plushies. I know I'm a weirdo that actually enjoys the sewing portion, but I think why I enjoy it is because you can really get your pieces customized to how you want them when you sew them. If you're crocheting them on, you have to crochet in line with the stitches. And as you can see, it makes for it to be very flat like this. And you can see with the bottom paws as well. Now, that's not a bad thing, and if you prefer that, then you're going to love this. But for me, I feel like it doesn't sit up as well because there's just not as much sewed down here. Whereas if I were to do this on my own, I would sew it in such a way that the tail and the feet balance each other out and it would sit up a little bit nicer. Not a huge deal. If that is something that you like, if you like some no-sew techniques, you're gonna like this, but it is not completely no-sew either. You do have to sew the head to the body You do have to sew on the heart, and then of course the face has a little bit of detail on it as well, and the ears. So I wouldn't even say, maybe it's low sew. I don't really know the definition of what's low sew, what's no sew, but there is a combination of some no sew techniques and some just regular sewing techniques. My favorite thing about this pattern though is the way that she is holding this heart. I think it is so cute, and my daughter absolutely loves that as well. She just looks so sweet, like she's handing you a little heart, and that's adorable. So I would definitely recommend this pattern overall. I would just say if you want to do the face shaping part, you might want to look up a quick tutorial like I mentioned, but other than that, really great pattern, and obviously it speaks for itself, and it was pretty quick to do as well. I made this in one afternoon. So the next pattern is this adorable little hedgehog who is also holding a heart. And this is by the designer Crochet to Play. It was found on their blog. So let's go ahead and cut to hedgehog making, Rachel. Okay, here he is, and I do think he turned out quite adorable. This is a gift for my older daughter, and she named him Pringles, which, I mean, why not? This pattern definitely gave me a little bit of a run for my money, but it was not actually the pattern's fault at all, which we will get to in a moment. But what I love about this pattern is that it is super well written. I had no issues with the way this was written whatsoever. There are photos on the blog for you to follow along. I love that as well. My problem with the pattern came down to my choice of using this fluffy yarn and using a larger hook than the hook that I used for the body section, which ended up making this way too big. So the way that you work the spikes is that you work one section, you're meant to work one section that goes around like this, and then you work a section that goes right here, and then you sew that to the body. Well, I did not even realize that as I was making the section to go around, that it was way too big. So as you saw in the clips, I sort of just folded it over in such a way and sewed it together. I'm actually shocked that you cannot tell at all where this was all kind of sewed together funky. The con about fluffy yarn is that you can't see your stitches. The pro about fluffy yarn is that you can't see your stitches. So it is kind of nice that it covers up some of those mistakes. I feel like you can't tell at all that I messed up. The end result is actually just so darn cute that I don't regret it. Now, the other thing that I did actually end up changing, which please forgive me, is that the pattern has you doing the spike section where you do a single crochet and then you alternate with a treble crochet back and forth like that to give it the texture. Since I was using a fluffy yarn and I didn't really need that, I just did all single crochets. I don't know why, but I hate doing treble crochets, and so I was happy to skip that portion. I do think that that method of using alternating single crochets and treble crochets is a nice method for giving texture if you are using a different type of yarn other than the fluffy yarn that I used. I'm really not sure what I was thinking using a bigger hook size. I should have realized that that section was going to be bigger, but you guys, I'm blaming it on the fact that someone or another has been sick in my house for the past 2 weeks straight. So my brain is a little bit fried, but we got there in the end. I will say the one thing that I will note is that they made theirs in a size 4 cotton, and they said the finished size was 4.5 inches. And I used a bulky yarn, and so I expected it to be bigger, but mine is also somehow 4.5 inches. I'm not really sure how that happened, but I do think it's actually a really, really cute size. And it actually matches the size of the Otter perfectly, which I did not plan. But I am really happy to recommend this pattern to you guys. It was the longest of the 4 of these patterns to make, but really not by much. I made this in one evening as well. So again, definitely recommend this one. So the next pattern that I found is this absolutely adorable little heart cactus. And it is on the Furls website, which if you don't know, Furls is a brand of crochet hooks. And I didn't even know that they had patterns on their websites, but apparently they do. So let's go ahead and cut to cactus making, Rachel. How stinking cute is this cactus? I think I'm in love. I think she is so adorable. As you can see, I did change the pot to be pink instead of brown like theirs. I'm still very much in my pink era, if you can't tell. But this did end up being the most difficult of the 4, which we will get to in a moment. So the heart section was very easy, pretty much like the other 2 hearts in the background, a very similar way. And I didn't have any problems with that whatsoever. But getting to the pot, that part was a little bit tricky. Now, I realized that I messed up a little bit because when I was going back to take some screenshots, I realized that you were supposed to join when it came to the pot section. And I didn't do that. And as you can see, it would have been probably a lot neater looking if I would have done joined rows for this section. But somehow my brain just skipped right over that. And I went right into doing spirals like I usually do. Again, I blame all of the illness in my house for my brain just not quite functioning properly in this video. But I do think that overall it turned out really cute. And I'll just hide that section in the back. No one will see it, right? So really there are only 2 tricky rows on this guy. The first one is where you do these spots. And essentially what you do is switch between the darker color and the lighter color every other stitch. And I will admit that I don't think I've ever done that before. And it took a little bit of finagling for me to kind of remember to switch after every single one. And once I got there, but I was a little bit like, oh goodness, this is a little bit trickier than I thought it was going to be. I do think the end result turns out really, really cute. Now, the other tricky section is the very top row. They have you doing a crab stitch, which essentially just means you're working counterclockwise as opposed to clockwise like you normally would. You're working kind of backwards, and it creates this really cool texture. Now, both of those rows are just to add some interest to the pot. You could just do single crochets. You could even just do this all in one solid color if you would like, just to make it a little bit easier on yourself. But I do think that those 2 rows add a nice interest to this, and it kept it a little bit interesting for me. So I enjoyed that. And the pattern does have video tutorials that they link to as well. So if you are finding it a bit tricky, they have a video if that is helpful for you. Now, my one criticism with this pattern is that for rows, I think it's 7 through 9 of the pot, they forgot to format it correctly. So all of the other rows are bolded and in a row. And for 7 to 9, it was just not spaced correctly and bolded correctly. I'll put a screenshot, but I almost just like skipped right over that. And then I realized really quickly, like, oh, that's not correct. I would have a really, really tiny pot if I skipped 3 rows of this thing. So I will say just notice that as you go along, because otherwise your pot will be not correct. Other than that though, super cute and pretty quick as well. I was surprised how quickly this worked up, even with the tricky rows. Okay, so now moving on to the very last pattern of this video. And then I actually have one honorable mention at the end. But the last official one for this video is this absolutely adorable little love pug on the blog, Stringy Ding Ding, which I think I have tried one of their patterns before for a video. For the life of me, I cannot remember which one. So if you guys remember, let me know. I think they have so many absolutely adorable patterns on their blog. So let's go ahead and cut to Love Pug making Rachel. So here he is, our fluffy little love pug. I think he turned out so adorable. He definitely makes me smile so much. Now this one was by far the quickest of the 4 to make. As you saw in the clips, I went and sat on my couch, but like by the time I sat down and finished a few pieces, it was time for me to get back up and go over to my desk to sew it together. It really did not take long. I want to say maybe only like 30 minutes or something like that. So if you're looking for a quick one, this is definitely quite quick. Now this pattern did call for pipe cleaners to use for the antennas or antennae, which is the correct word, I'm not sure. But it did call for you using a pipe cleaner and then using little pom-poms to glue on top. Now I didn't have any pom-poms and I also don't really like gluing things. So I did just shape the ends of my pipe cleaners into little hearts, and I think that turned out pretty darn cute. My one criticism for this pattern is that it does not have any instructions for where to put the safety eyes or the safety nose. It doesn't even tell you put in the safety eyes now. It completely skips over that part. So be sure to pay attention and put in those safety eyes before you close it up, because otherwise you will have to go back in and embroider them in the end, which is fine. But I do kind of prefer when patterns tell you at least some sort of idea of where to put the eyes. I feel like I put mine a little bit too high and it changed the end result, but I do think that it ended up cute anyway. But that is my one criticism. And other than that, it's written really well. There are photos as you go. There is, a decent amount of sewing. You have to sew on each of the pieces, so it's not no-sew by any means, but it's still really, really quick, like I said, and it's a cute little squishable size. I think any kiddo would love having this, like waking up to this on Valentine's morning. Super cute, super adorable. So for my honorable mention, now this might seem really obvious, but if you don't want to make a Valentine specific pattern, you can just make any old pattern, any pattern that you already like, and just make it in pink and red, which is what I did for this adorable little snake. So this pattern is by Stitch by Faye, and it is a quick little no-sew snake, and I love that this is very customizable. I made it exactly like the pattern calls for, but you can make it longer, you can make it shorter, whatever you prefer. And again, bonus points for it being no-sew. It is so quick. I made this in one sitting, just sitting there one evening, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. I want to make a snake in every color now. So that is all I have for you guys today. You'll have to let me know what you thought about today's video. Are you going to be trying any of these patterns? Which one was your favorite? Oh my goodness, if I had to choose, That's really hard. I really, really like the little heart cactus. I think he's my personal favorite just because I love plants. And I actually think he's supposed to be modeled after a real plant, which is a Hoya of some sort. I can't remember the exact name. I'll put a picture of it. They are quite adorable. I've never actually bought one for myself, but now I'm kind of inspired to after making my little heart guy there. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you've made it to this part, I want to know, what were you working on as you watched today's video? If you did like today's video, be sure to hit the like button. You can subscribe, stick around. Let me know what other kind of videos you want to see next. You can join my Patreon where I make a bonus video as well as an exclusive pattern once a month. And thank you again for watching. I'll see you next time.